Hey, this is Rick, Finca Casanga. Welcome to beautiful Boquete, Panama. It's a gorgeous day today, a little sunny. We're coming up on the time of year where we need to change signs out. We lease coffee trees to people, and we're hitting the end of the harvest, which means most of these trees with signs in front of them will belong to someone else in short order. So we need to reuse these signs. We don't want to make new ones every go around, but they're dirty, and so we need to clean them. This was Katie and Matt's sign, and we need to clean this so that we can reuse it for this season. We do this for a couple hundred signs every year, and I'm going to show you how we do it. So now that we have the signs pressure washed, they're clean, but we're going to reuse these signs, and we reuse as much as we can. The easiest way to do this is just to scratch this up a little bit and put a whole new sheet of black vinyl over it, and then build a new sign on top. That allows us to reuse these year after year. Looks like this is on its fourth or fifth season, which is pretty good for one sign. But this new vinyl isn't going to stick very well with this if it's too slick. So we're going to scuff it. I'm going to use some window cleaner, scrub pad, and I'm just trying to scratch it a little bit so that the new vinyl will stick to it. It also cleans it up a little bit, but it should be pretty clean at this point. So that should scuff it well enough for the new vinyl to stick. Wipe it down a little bit. And then we need our new sheet of vinyl. We buy this in an entire roll. We go through a lot of it. So I'll cut my section. I'm going to peel a little bit of this back. Now, real sign people, they would use application fluid. But we're in Panama, you can't just buy that here. So I use Windex, window cleaner. It works fine. We're going to apply this wet so that I can get most of the bubbles out. And I'll start by lining up this edge. Pull the backing, smooth it out a little bit. Use a roller, we'll get most of the air out. The way we make these signs, there are screws in the top, which isn't ideal, but that's how we do it. And so I'm going to cut around each of these screws so they don't interfere with the vinyl. Every sign is a little bit different. None of them were built exactly the same. They were built by different people at different times, so screws are in different locations. Even the dimensions of the sign, each one is slightly different. We use a jig to make these pieces and bend them to the right sizes, but there's a little bit of variation in each one. This one has 6 screws in it. Get some more air out. And then I'm just going to go along the edge, cut the excess vinyl so that it lays nice and neat. So the top part, we leave it just a little bit long and roll it over the top of the sign. It gives us a clean edge on the top, but also helps keep water from leaking between the vinyl and the metal sheet on the back. If you get water back there, it starts to bubble with water. Lower it one more time. Real sign people would be having a fit right now. This is not how you would do real signs, but this is a sign for a coffee tree in Panama, and it really only has to last a year. So we'll roll the tops over, get those stuck down, and after a day, probably a little less, the window cleaner that's under this will evaporate, and this black sheet will be firmly adhered. And that's when we can start putting the actual graphics over the top. So when you look very carefully at it, it doesn't look so great. But at a distance, it looks fine, and it's going to work fine for identifying a coffee tree. It's time to make signs. So one of our customers, Peter, decided his sign should say Peter's Hidden Desire with a package. So I gave him a few options to choose from, and he chose this one. So this is what his sign is going to look like in front of his tree. And we don't cut these out by hand. There's a little machine to do this. So I'm going to get this set up for cutting the vinyl, and then we'll let the machine do most of the work. So the data's been sent to the vinyl cutter. This is a pretty simple one, but we've been using it for years, and it works great. It just takes adhesive vinyl and cuts the shapes out of them so that we don't have to do that by hand. So we're cutting blue right now. Peter has a few different colors, so we cut these one color at a time, and here we go with the blue. Okay, so the robot did my work for me. This is great. We're going to cut it off of the roll now. Seems like it did a good job. But now we need to separate all these little cutouts from the backing. This is called weeding, kind of like you're weeding plants, I guess. So, all right, with our vinyl cut, we need to separate the cut areas from the part we want. This is called weeding. And if you've done all of this correctly, it should be pretty simple. But we have to pull all of this vinyl off that we don't want. It's kind of tedious, but much better than cutting it by hand. There's the blue part of our sign. Now we need to cut the rest and weed it, and then we can put it on the sign itself. Okay, time to actually put the sign stickers on the sign. These are the signs we were preparing a couple days ago. They've been cleaned. They have new blank vinyl applied to them, so fresh sign, but reused from last year, from several years actually. So now we need to get these cutout stickers onto our sign, and the way we do that is by using some transfer tape. There's several kinds. I like the clear plastic stuff because we can see through it, and it's kind of reusable. You can probably use this for several signs if you're careful. So transfer tape is now sticking to our graphics. We'll peel the backing off of that. And then we can see the vinyl that it cut out. So now we put it on the sign. Make sure it's stuck down really well. And then we'll peel this off. Because this is less adhesive than this, the white part will stay on the sign frame. This is how lots of signs are made, but this is how we do it with all of these signs for people that have a tree here. Peter's number is 012. Number goes in the corner. I'm going to put Peter's on top. Same idea. Okay, I'm going to line it up in the center, stick it down. More complicated signs, sometimes you'll apply wet so that you can work out all the bubbles or move them around a little bit. Most of these simple signs, it's not worth doing that. It takes more time and then they have to dry afterwards. And this works pretty well for the more simple ones. And same thing here. I think I've been trying to reuse this transfer tape a little too long. It's not sticking to the letters very well. That lined up right. I get to do this outside, which is kind of nice, but it's less fun when it's windy because it starts blowing things all over the place. And then we'll just smooth it out a little bit in case we have any spots. We have a spot right here. All right, make sure the whole thing is very firmly attached. This has to stand up to at least a year of the Panama sun and rain and whatever else happens to it. And this is Peter's new sign. We're going to go place it on his tree here in a moment.